Hi, I'm Tyler Holmes, a full-stack developer with Fishtank Consulting, and today we're going to be talking about how to use SWR to improve your front-end performance, mainly focusing on how to improve those API calls. So this will be beneficial whether we're communicating directly with Headless Sitecore, or if we're just connecting to any CIM or Open API endpoint that we want to communicate to. Okay, so let's start with what is SWR. Now, SWR stands for Stale While Revalidate. It's a type of caching. You might already know it as hydration if you're a React dev. You probably experienced that before, that term before. It basically just means that we can update the data on the page in real time. And so this is a hook that's been created by Vercel. It was built specifically for React and Next.js, so you can implement it into both projects. And it just allows you to seamlessly improve the API responses. So the main idea here is that it essentially allows you to return cached data when you hit the same endpoint on multiple pages, and then you get to choose when you want to update or revalidate that cached data. So if a user returns to a page, or it's the first time that they enter onto a page, you kind of simplify how the data fetching and caching works, and also reduces the amount of states items that you need to create, since you can just use the one hook for kind of all of these items. It also works well with Next.js and obviously supports SSR, SSG, and ISR, right? It works with all of them really, really well. And it also isn't limited to any specific language. It's easily used with both REST or GraphQL calls, which GraphQL is going to be pretty relevant for us if we're making calls from Sitecore. So why use SWR with Sitecore? Well, it's actually pretty simple. It helps reduce API loads with optional caching. So this is good to just kind of relieve and cache data easily. It allows pages to load fast with cached data to give the appearance of faster APIs, so that now the page can load and then you can make a call to the API instead of doing a serverless call to the API and delaying the initial page load. And it allows you to also easily update any existing data. Say, for example, you have a page and a form. If you update that form, user goes in, updates some information and hits update, you can automatically pull the new data to update just what's been changed by the form. So how does SWR work? It's actually pretty simple. First, we just need to import SWR from the package, from the npm package, and then we can create our fetch function. So I'm just going to use a generic one-line REST fetch function here as an example, but the function can be as complex as you want, and you can use REST or GraphQL. Like I said before, you're not limited on what you can use, so it can be any kind of function. And then next we create the Use SWR hook that we're importing. And this is what connects all the pieces together and gives us that amazing utility tools from SWR. So we're going to pass our async fetch directly to the SWR hook. With SWR, we will use that fetch to pull the data dynamically, right? So it's going to work automatically as long as we pass in the function as a parameter. And the URL is kind of like our key for the cache identity. It's the same as putting a key attribute on a next image. It tells SWR to cache the response and to use that cache for any incoming requests to the same URL. This URL would most likely be a URL to your Next.js serverless function API route if you're using those, which most of us would be. This pattern works the exact same no matter kind of where you're fetching it from. Like I said, whether it's an Next.js API route, or you're fetching directly from the Sitecore layout service endpoint, or you're fetching from a GraphQL endpoint with a fetcher set up for GraphQL, it all works the same. As long as this URL is the same, then it's going to cache that data. If you have the same URL on multiple pages, but you need to pull slightly different data, or you want to make sure that every time the user pulls new data, when they reach that specific page, like an overview page, you can also add a query string to the end of this URL that's unique to each individual page. And that will change the key for that item. So the data comes back in the data, error, and isLoading structure. This allows for immediate handling of the three major states of an API call, all directly from the SWR hook, right? So there's no need to create or manage these state items yourself. It really simplifies your API calls. So it's very common when you're building an API that you manually will create a data, so a response item, an error item, and an isLoading item, but this is all handled directly in SWR, reducing the amount of clutter and extra state that you create to put into your component. So there's three major steps for the SWR data flow. The first is it shows cache data if available. So this is our fast and responsive UI. If there's no cache, then you can use the isLoading value to display a loading skeleton just to kind of, delay the UI, show the user that the UI is rendering. The next step is how SWR revalidates and fetches the new data from behind the scenes. So it's going to go and check, pull the data, and then check to make sure that it updates if it's new. And then the final step is how SWR hydrates the page once it gets the new data. The data will just automatically update on the page, replacing the old data. So it's not going to make any fancy changes, nothing's going to flash. If it's, for example, if the value is just a number, in the original number was 2 and the new number is 3, the user will arrive on the page, it'll be shown as 2, and then after the new data is arrived, it'll just automatically update or hydrate to 3. So where does SWR fit in a Sitecore setup? Well, the main benefit is to use SWR to pull data directly from Sitecore through either the layout service or more likely a GraphQL endpoint. This is important because it allows the website to automatically update dynamic content from Sitecore or immediately load cache data if a user is returning to a page. So an example of when this could be useful is pulling data directly from Sitecore for a navigation menu. You can reduce the amount of data that's being initially sent to the user on the front end, essentially code splitting the incoming data by calling for that additional data after the page is loaded. So we're reducing the load of the incoming data from Sitecore, so the initial page will load faster, and then we're just pulling the initial data, the extra data we need after the fact, right? So it gives that, really helps improve the perception of a faster website by kind of splitting up the code chunks. You can also indefinitely load Sitecore items like blogs or products by using SWRInfinite. This would be super useful if you're ever displaying a large amount of content and want to paginate it to the user. So the getKey item, that value, defines the pagination, while the fetcher is the same fetch function we talked about earlier. So we can define the getKey function to pull data directly, which keeps our requests small and fast, which is what we want when we're dealing with like mobile devices or any device that is going to struggle more with those larger income sizes, right? Those larger packages that are incoming, we want to kind of handle those with as much small data as possible, right? Multiple small requests is better than one big request. So the big benefit of using SWR over just standard preloading lots of content by using server-side rendering is, like I said, that improvement in performance. It keeps our pages static and loading fast by reducing that initial byte size we send to the user on first load. By choosing to pull some data after the fact, after the page is loaded, you can improve that perceived performance by reducing the size of that initial payload. It's really important to kind of be thinking about how can we improve performance for the user, and one of the best ways is to decrease the size of your payloads and split them into multiple calls. So how can you use SWR outside of Sitecore, or more specifically outside of Sitecore queries? Well, it's useful for any GET request, right? Like SWR can be used for pretty much any call, whether that's after a post, you want to get new data after you post an update, or you want to pull data when the user lands on the page, right? The built-in caching makes it very powerful and lightweight, and it's just an overall strong tool for pulling data from any existing APIs. So any API-heavy projects could really take advantage of this. If you're working with a client with a CIM API is a great example. This can just connect directly to that API and pull the data directly from it, and you're going to get the benefit of caching. Thank you for watching. This has been great. Hopefully you've learned something useful about Sitecore and Headless, especially SWR, and hopefully you'll be able to utilize it and implement it into your own projects down the line.